Okay, so first thing let's just go down and introduce yourself and your involvement.
I'm Maggie Baird, and you were like the best audience. They laughed at every little thing. It was great.
I'm Lori Nasso.
I'm Jill Danienica.
So as we all know, it takes an army to make a film happen. So anybody in the audience you want to acknowledge who worked on the film?
There's a lot of people. Let me start. I'll say one. My son, Phineas, is in the back. Mm-hmm. And,
and Tessa Bell, our producer. Guido Franzel, our director of photography. Philip Malamuth, our co-editor. Pandora Can, our publicity person, social media. Felice, long-suffering wife of the editor. Yeah. Did I miss somebody? No? Okay.
Cool. So we're going to start with the story and script. How did the story kind of come to be? What was the idea? What was the nugget? How did the story start?
Well, some of it is autobiographical. So I was a songwriter when I was young, and then I did take it back up, and with some other friends, Lori being one of them, we started a little singing group called the Performers Collective, which was really just a way for 5 moms to get out into the world and perform in clubs, because I knew that I would never, ever go. I would never leave my kids to go out and perform, so I told all these women, let's make this group, and then I'll play for you, and you sing harmony for me, and then I'll have to go, because I'll have to be there for you, and then I'll feel like I can justify it. So we started this group, and then Lori and I started singing together, and then my son started singing, and the idea came, and I said, Lori, I want to write this script, and I kind of told her, and she was like, oh, wow, yeah. I have a sort of another idea about music and women, and so...
and I had actually written a film myself, really weirdly, a few years ago. I hadn't quite finished it, but it was a very similar themed film about a woman who rediscovers her passions for music in her middle age, so... it was just weird, and so when she told me about her idea, I was like, well, that's bizarre. And then it was weird, because I found it a few months ago, and I was telling Maggie that on the last page, I had written the last scene, and she hands her daughter the guitar to play at this final thing. And I'd completely forgotten about that, but it was so weird that it came to fruition in this other way. So it was kind of a merging of these two stories.
Yeah,
so it was
very
nice, yeah.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, it was really cool. So.
Very cool. So then you guys, was it from day one, you're like, we're going to write it together, and we're going to be co-writers, or how did that kind of come to be?
Well, yeah, kind of in the same way. I like to co-write because it makes you show up. So I was like, but here's the thing you have to know, Lori. We're going to make this movie. And Lori came from a little bit of a different world. I was kind of obsessed with mumblecore movies. I watch every mumblecore movie. I watch all the Duplass brothers movies. I just love indie films. So I had this obsession. I was like, we're going to make this movie. And, if we have an iPhone, I don't care. We're going to make it. So that was how it started, right from the beginning. We weren't gonna try to sell it. We were gonna make it, and we got lucky because we hoodwinked all these people into believing in us. And we just kept saying we're making a movie, and people believe you when you say it. It's amazing. And then gradually, people are like, I read your script, and like, sure. And then we had Jill was like, I want to direct it, and we conned Tessa into producing it, and pretty soon we had to do it because everybody believed we were going to do it.
So what maybe you talked about co-writing helps you show up. Is there any other pros and cons? People are like, maybe I want a co-writer. Maybe I want someone to assist me in making this script happen.
Yeah, I mean, I found that to be a great thing for me because I second guess so much, but I also feel like, we thought we have to talk about the time involved. It did take us a year and a half because we could only get together like once every 1 or 2 weeks, once a day every 1 or 2 weeks. And so it was a long process, but we did get it done. But it was great to have the other person pushing you and, making you show up.
But can I tell you, it took them a year and a half to write it, and it was filmed within 6 months after that. Mm-hmm. So it might have been a sort of long gestation period, but it was in the can 6 months later.
Right.
Well, we had some problems because Jill had a hiatus. She had to shoot on her hiatus. Right. And we wanted to use Phineas, and he was getting taller. Right. So we had sort of a window, and it was sort of then or never.
Or you were going to have to cut his legs off, and that would have just been
awkward. It would have been good.
So that's a perfect transition into a little bit of the idea of producing. Once you have that script, obviously you guys are attached to it. You guys know you want to make it happen, but two people can't make a film, and producers of two. There's so much work you need to get done. So, on the IMDb it says you have 15 producers. So how did you start convincing other people to put in the amount of work that you want to put in to make it happen?
Well,
yeah.
We started with a Kickstarter campaign. Okay. And we wound up getting close to 500 supporters and $41,000 off of Kickstarter. And that, which was a full-time job in itself for Maggie and I especially, but everybody on our team. And then that $41,000 and the 500 supporters convinced other people that it was a good investment. And that's how we got more people to invest in our movie for the rest of the budget.
But the real, the producing core was really the three of us, Tessa, our producer, and our cinematographer. And then we had a lot of wonderful associate producers, Pandora, who came on from Craigslist and just helped us out tremendously. And then we just had favors up the wazoo. Every single person that I'd ever baked a cake for came and did something on the movie. It was, the help that we had, it takes an army. It took an entire community of Los Angeles to make this movie.
And then how did you get folded in, Jill? Did you guys know each other for way back? And
Maggie and I met each other at a La Leche League meeting about 15 and a half years ago. I was a new mom of this baby that wouldn't sleep and would cry every time I put her down, and I was a complete wreck. And Maggie seemed like this old pro. She had this 6-month-old kid, Phineas, and she was just this and in the parking lot after the La Leche League meeting, I literally knocked on her car window and made her roll the window down, and I said, "I want to be your friend." That's how we met. And we've been friends ever since. Our kids went to a co-op preschool together. We homeschooled our kids together. And
we talked about making a movie for years.
For most of those 15.
Oh, I'm an actor, a writer, and you're an editor, and we know Guido, and he's a cinematographer, and we just have to make a movie together. And they were like, well, we just need a script. And I was like, I can write a script.
Nice. So then as you produced, what was some unexpected things even before you got to production that happened that you're like, okay, we have to adjust, or we have to do this, or we have to add more people, or we need to get more help?
Before production?
Before you even got to set and producing and
right up to the last second, Guido will tell you. I think Guido did not believe we were making this film until about a day before we shot, right? Once again, we were just BSing our way to the finish line. But there were so many problems along the way because we didn't just need the Kickstarter money. Our producer kept assuring us that really wasn't enough. And so
she didn't want to make the iPhone movie that we were saying we would make if we had to. She said she had no interest in making a handy cam movie. Bless her, because that's how we got this, because she kept insisting we needed to make an actual movie with a real camera.
So what are maybe a couple of examples that she pushed you to go farther than maybe you were planning to go?
Yeah, she pushed us to keep looking for funds, keep asking for favors, anything we could do to keep it in the budget, which was low.
Right. But, she treated it like a real movie. She made me go on location scouts and talk to people and try to get people to offer their spaces. And, she negotiated all of the spaces so that we could have actual real places to shoot. It was ultra low budget. But
even in the production, we shot 7 of the 16 days at my tiny house. Our house is 2 bedrooms, which we had to make it look like 3 bedrooms. Plus, our house has an aerial rig in the backyard, a trapeze, and aerial silks in the backyard.
In the backyard, we were avoiding that shot.
Had to disguise.
We had to avoid it with the camera. And we also had to, strangely enough, for a movie about music, we had to avoid the baby grand the whole time because we couldn't move it out of that piano room for the shoot. It was too heavy. So I had to keep shooting in the other direction until the scene where he brings the piano to the house.
And then there were 3 pianos in our 2-bedroom
then there's another piano in Phineas's bedroom that we had to avoid because we couldn't get it out the door, but we had to do all these scenes in his room. So that's hidden behind the door. And then there's actually a scene where I had to cut around a guitar case that was laid on the living room table and wasn't supposed to be there. The art director left it there, and I was so fried that I thought, well, it looks so artfully placed. It must supposed to be there. And then at the very last shot,
in the middle of shooting, I was like my line, and I was like, oh, the guitar's in the shot.
And it was not supposed to be on that table. And so in editing, Philip and I had to avoid this guitar that was in the background. So it's just insanely ironic that we had to avoid all these musical instruments in this movie.
That is hilarious. I love that. That's a great story. Let's talk. We have an audience of actors, so we'd like to talk a little bit about casting. And we have actors who decided to take on a project and produce and create their own work, which is what we're here at the foundation so encouraging people to do. So talk a little bit about that. Was it all people you knew? Did you have to have a whole casting session? How did you cast your film?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that we were in the film, and
We thought about giving up some of those roles too at some
yeah,
point
we
to
thought
make it
about
more
it for about
marketable.
20 seconds.
Yeah, and then we
Yeah.
decided
We
not
would bring
to.
it up every once in a while as a smart business move, and then Maggie would get tears in her eyes, and we would all say to each other, "This is ridiculous. They wrote this movie
Why
to
can't we be
make
in
this
it?"
movie.
Right,
They have
exactly.
to be in it. There's no way we're giving up any of these spots."
Well, I had a dark night of the soul when our producer said, "You're friends with Amy Ryan. Amy Ryan would be great in this part." And for a night, I was like, yeah, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? My family is broke. If this movie makes money, I support my family. Amy Ryan, my friend, would probably make money in this movie. I probably will not. I'm going to do it anyway. But it was really hard. It was a really hard decision. And in complete candor, I still have a lot of nights where I think that. Because now you go to distribution people and they're like, if you just had one name in your movie, and I think, maybe I made the wrong choice. But then I look at my son and I think, I got to do this with my son and it was awesome.
Audience, Tess just said it was the right choice.
And so in terms of other casting, we did do a couple of casting sessions with a casting agent, and people came in for certain parts. A lot of them were, Maggie would fly people by me that she knew that she thought would be great for Mike. There were about 4 different people in contention for
Well, David Cowgill, actually, we wrote the part with David Cowgill in mind.
hoping he would be available.
Because I saw him in a play. Susan Leslie was here. I saw him in the play Yellow, and he was so amazing. And we had just started writing. I was like, I saw this amazing actor, and I've looped with him a few times. And she was like,
oh my God, I know him. So it was, and he's a dad at my school, so it
So
kind of
we
worked out
wrote
really
it
well.
with him in mind the whole time, and then we actually didn't even run it by him till a few weeks before.
Yeah,
happened
and
to
then
be
he,
free,
thank
thank God.
goodness, he made himself free for us to play that part because he was great. And then I think we knew one of the twins. We knew Orson from he's the little brother of a friend of ours, and he came into audition with me. He lives by me at the Brewery Arts Complex. And I said, "You don't happen to have a friend that looks exactly like you that could play your twin brother, do you?" And he said, "As a matter of fact, I do." And so he brought Roscoe in, and they were great. And this is the interesting thing about those two. I had them read both parts, and it was very, very clear that Orson had to be Devin and Roscoe had to be Eli. When they read the opposite parts, it was terrible. It was a train wreck. And then I would switch them back again, and they were golden. So it was, and they were very similar. They were written kind of very similar, but it was very clear that they were perfect in the parts they got.
We did a lot of offers, though. I mean, we didn't, the man, Bill Hunt, who plays our dad, we just offered it to him. We didn't want to have,
And there were SAG guidelines too. You could only have a certain amount of
well, we could only
SAG.
afford we had to have a certain amount of
Right.
SAG people.
And then we had to
that was
hire-
it.
And then we brought in friends.
Non-SAG.
So the crazy lecherous poet is actually my husband.
And your husband.
My husband plays the
Music.
guy in the music
The guy in the
store.
music store. And then the musicians, Guido is one of the camera people on The Voice, and so we got him to wrangle a couple of the people from The Voice to be in our show, either in photographic form or Xenia, the first person when they're walking into the club. She was on The Voice season 1. We were so lucky to get her. Yogi, who plays the guitar, the song at the end while Laura's making her decision not to go on stage, is an old acquaintance of mine from years back. He played with my cousin with Chris Cornell's band. So I wrangled Yogi in.
Steve McMorrin is from Satellite, and they're amazing, and you've got to go listen to their album.
Yeah, so I think all of the musicians, one of us was friends with or something and grabbed them in.
We did have one casting session, though, for the actors in the room, because you were asking. It really did change my opinion, having been on the other side of the room for so long. We did a terrible, horrible thing. somehow accidentally, we had already offered the part to David Cowgill, and somehow accidentally, the man who was helping us do some casting put that part out on a breakdown. And there was one guy who came in to read for it, and he was so good. He was absolutely fantastic, and we felt like heels because the part had already been cast, and I wanted to run out to him in the parking lot and apologize, but it really was so eye-opening because they always tell you as an actor that it's not you and you all did a great job, and it's so true. Everyone was good and everyone had something. It really wasn't in their control in a way.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking because we saw so many great people, and you can't give 3 people the same role. You have to pick one. And so yeah, it's difficult on the other end when you're casting, watching these people, bring their heart and soul to the table for you. It's very...
And then we cast one older man as an old songster who had a scene that we cut. There's a close-up of him, but his scene is actually gone.
Yeah,
and
he's now just an extra.
that broke my heart because that's happened to me so many times. So.
Lori, you're as a writer, you said you work on television shows. What are maybe some tips for actors in that audition room that can help them?
I've been looking at a lot of casting tapes over the last couple of weeks, and I just noticed what a difference it makes when you're off book. It's just a huge, you just leap up to the top, the group, the top, picks, because you can't watch somebody go back down to the script and come back into character. It's really, you lose the flow. So I learned as an actress to try my hardest to get off book if I can.
Eyes are the windows to the soul, so we want to see them as much as possible.
I think, yeah, and it just disturbs the person's concentration. It's hard for both sides, I think, yeah.
Definitely. We're going to transition a little bit into directing. Jill, what was it like to have some of your actors also be the writers on set? Did you guys last-minute changes in the script, or were they like, no, these are the words, and we're going to do it just like this? Or did you have to, let's talk a little about that.
Well, in pre-production, we were told by our lovely producer that we had to cut 10 pages out of the movie, and so that was painful. So Maggie and I had to sit there and start to edit the script. And we didn't, did we get 10 pages out? Or not quite? No, maybe 4? And I kept saying to her, Maggie, if we don't get them out now, I'm going to have to pull them out in the editing room. So I'm just letting you know that that's what's going to happen, because it can't, it's true. We can't have a 3-hour movie. And so we started to make changes then, and some really wonderful changes happened in pre-production when we were talking. Little moments that I just love, like when...
And I would say it was me and Jill, because at that time Lori had suddenly launched into this full-time writing job.
Right before we were about to shoot.
The writers on my staff were here tonight, but I hadn't worked in so many years because I was home raising kids, and I got this full-time head writing job on a television show. So of course, it all happens at once. So we're just about to go into the movie, and I get this job for 3 months. So I had to do my parts on the weekends, and after working all day, I'd run to Silver Lake and do a quick scene. It was crazy. So I wasn't as available over the summer because my job started in June, and we were shooting in September. So I kind of had to remove myself from that part of the process. So.
But part of the and part of it, for instance, one scene we had to rewrite because of the shoot days. And it's the scene where Laura and her father are in the park, and she's got the pills, and she's talking to him, which is a lovely scene. And first of all, we rewrote it to make him a little more vulnerable and not as all-knowing, I think, was one of the things we did.
He was a little too sage-like.
Yeah, so we made him have a little bit of heartbreak himself and be a little bit less sure of himself. But then the other thing that we did in the rewrite is because of how the schedule worked out, we had to be at the scene, the zip line, the party scene. We had to be in Altadena shooting that day. So we had to move the location of that scene, which was supposed to be on your front porch, I think.
It was a dog park.
A dog park, yeah, we kept moving. It kept moving around. And every time we switched locations, we had to switch sort of what they were saying. And finally we came on, okay, it's going to be a park. And there was a park across the street from the house. And Guido and I literally, we scouted it out 20 minutes before we were supposed to shoot, and there were all these park rangers there, so we thought we would get shut down because, of course, we didn't have permits. So we walked around the front yard of that house, and I said, Guido, here's our park. It was in their front yard. There was some trees behind. I made the producers and some of our PAs jog behind them, and I said, that's our park. And then Guido took Maggie and Bill across the street to the park for just one quick shot where they're walking through a park at the end, which was awesome. But anyway, the scene had to be rewritten because we kept switching locations, and that didn't happen only once, yeah.
As producers and directors, you can plan and plan and plan, and then something happens the day of that totally just takes those plans and throws them out the window, and you have to improvise in the moment.
Angry monks.
Angry monks is something I was exactly thinking. So what other moments that happened that maybe we don't know by watching the film, you're like, oh, if you'd have known about this, oh my gosh.
The classic moment?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were shooting at the club, and I didn't know what was going on because Tessa, thank God, she was keeping it from me, but there was something going on back there. And finally,
It involved police.
It involved police, and one of the PAs came up to me and said, do you know that Tessa's upstairs talking to a police officer? And I was like, what? And we were on day 1.5, and we were having a really good day in the club. We were getting a lot of our shots done. I was feeling good. And it was 1:30, and the police were there shutting us down because we didn't have a permit. Even though we had, rented the spot out, we didn't have a permit to have our truck on the street and be shooting in LA. And so they said, if you shoot one more shot, someone's going to jail, and it's going to be Tessa. And Tessa said, you have to shoot Steve, the guy that was singing when Maggie gets the ketchup on her shirt. You have to shoot him. He came in from Nashville for 1 day to do this. And I was like, I don't want you to go to jail. She's like, just shoot it. And so I'm shooting it while the guys are behind me loading stuff into the truck to make it look to the police like we're getting out of there. And I gave Steve 1 take with 2 cameras. That was it. And then we had to reschedule because we couldn't get the actual permit that we needed for the next day, which was when we were supposed to shoot the third. We only had 3 days in the club. So we had to reschedule. We had to pull everything, all the lights. Guido had spent a whole day with his crew putting all the lights up. We had to take it all out, and we had to reschedule. And Yogi, who's singing that song as Laura makes her decision at the end of the movie, tells me, with the hat, tells me, I'm going to be in Europe on the reshoot day. I can't be there. And I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I went to Guido and I said, we have to shoot him. We need that song. We all agreed that's the song we want at the end of the movie while she's making her decision. And I said, let's shoot him at my studio downtown. I've got high ceilings, we just shoot him against the red wall that I have in my studio. And Guido goes, that's not going to work. And I was like, well, you have to do something. I'm like a blubbering idiot. And he goes, we'll shoot him in Maggie's backyard. And I didn't know how Maggie's backyard was better than my studio, but he had the art department get a red curtain. He hung it, and then he lit it. He took the lights from the club, and he lit it. And friggin' Guido made that shot work. And I said, in editing, I will make it look like he's in the club. No one will know the difference. So him on stage is actually Maggie's backyard.
Wow.
And when Guido got behind Yogi with the camera, I was behind Guido because I didn't have a monitor. And he went up in the sky in the black, and then he came down, and he had a light on the roof of the house, and he came down, and it caught the flecks of dust in the sky, and I started crying, and I just screamed out, holy shit, this is beautiful. Thank God we were using playback so that I didn't ruin the take. Yeah, amazing.
So, if my understanding is correct, this is all your guys' first feature that you've created, that you produced and made. So, now that it's done, what's some thoughts for people who are thinking about being the first time shooting a feature, like, you need to know this, or I wish I'd have known this?
I think you should just go for it and pay no attention to anything you should know, or you won't do it. Right. I think honestly, if it was so incredibly hard, it would really be hard to do it again. And it was just the naivete and the drive to do it, So there's a lot of stuff to know, but you have to commit to doing it before you learn that, because
you have to jump
really
in,
hard.
I think.
If you actually knew how hard it was to make a movie, you wouldn't do it. So you have to be a little deluded. Mm-hmm. You do. I've always said it. When I was just producing and editing movies before I directed one, I've always said you have to be a little, to be able to do. It's true. It's really true.
But you should do it. You should definitely do it.
Not to not do it.
It's fun.
And
this is the fun part now.
How much do you have to love the script and the project to do it?
Well, I would imagine a lot. I mean, we did. We had a lot of passion, all of us for different reasons, but it was a story very close to us all. Well, especially Maggie and I. I mean, it really resonated with us because it came from us, and we knew the words that were coming out of our mouths we got to play those characters. So those were our words, and we knew how we wanted them to sound. We knew what the characters were, who the characters were, and it was so pure in that sense, and it's so authentic to us, and your story's in there, and so much of your life, and bits of mine, and I think it felt very close to us, so there was a huge amount of passion involved, and I think that always helps with any project.
I think, you have to really love the script and really want to tell the story. I mean, I do know people who are directors who are like, I just really want to be a director, and you know, they have a script in mind, but it's just they just really want to be a director. And I think I don't think it's about being a director. I think it's about telling a story. Every single thing about making a movie is, I want to tell this story. And in this case, it was a small story. Like we wanted to tell this little slice of life.
And we knew, it didn't have probably nobody would have bought this story necessarily. I don't think anybody would have, because it was a small story, and if we tried to sell the script, it might have been tough unless some actress really loved it and got attached to it, or some actor. But I feel like we didn't have to worry about that, because it was a story we wanted to tell, and we were able to tell it from beginning to end, to the beginning and the end of this whole process. It is the story still that we wanted to tell. So it's very satisfying to look at that and feel that. And I remember the funny story was when I said I wouldn't help promote it, because if it didn't turn out well,
she actually said to us in a production meeting,
because they were talking about, and after it's done, we all have to promote it, and we all have to do, and I was like, can I just say that if it's not good, if it doesn't turn out, because it's all our first time, I don't know, I didn't know I had such doubts about it all.
Way to have
working.
faith in her
I know,
team.
but I said, just in case, I said I might not want to really promote it. I said, I didn't know what it was going to be, and I remember the first night we watched it, I think I was the most other people had notes, I was just like, it's a freaking movie. I can't believe this it's got a big beginning, middle, and end, and it was really touching, and it looked beautiful, and it was so much better than I ever imagined, because I've never made a movie. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't think it would be as good as it is, because I thought you had to, that's a real encouraging point, I hope, because you think it takes years and years and perfection and tons of experience and studying, but it doesn't necessarily. If you know how to tell a story and you know how to perform or write or communicate, you can do it, and you can work with others, and it is such a collective. It is such, which is what our friendship is, born from, a collective. It's a collaborative effort. It's not just one person. It takes a whole community of people to make a movie, and that was also really satisfying and really beautiful. So,
I think that's a good note to end on. Let's give him another hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.